Do you have like a hard out?
6 a.m., man.
Okay. I have to go to a pediatrician appointment at 4.
You still see a pediatrician? That's good. I remember not wanting to leave my pediatrician. She loved Ron White, the comedian. Do you know Ron White? It's like, damn. When you find out your doctor's taste in comedy, you kind of start questioning your doctor.
You're ready to find another GP.
Like your doctor better like Mort Saul or something. Like it better be like really heady. Yeah, she was great. So you got a pediatrician at 4. Okay, we'll get you out of here by then.
Okay, great. This is American Masters Creative Spark. I'm your host, Joe Skinner. Our guest today is Chris Fleming, a wordsmith, a fashion icon, and a wildly physical performer who pushes observational comedy to its absurd and manic limits. We're talking about his special, Live at the Palace, and how he got here, starting in Stowe, Massachusetts, population 7,000.
It's so depressing to be the lesser known Stowe. Because everyone knows Stowe, Vermont, because it's like the cider capital of the world, and everyone's like, I think the X Games are there and stuff. But Stowe without the E is just...
Yeah, so paint a picture of Stowe without the E.
Okay. No streetlights. A lot of... there was something called... well, there's a farm there, and the big event for our family would be going to see when the lambs are sheared, and we called it when we were young we called it Lammy Day, and we thought this was kind of what it was called, and my sister found out the rough way. I think later. I think maybe even high school, being like, "Hey, y'all going to Lammy Day?" And we were like, "What the Lammy Day?" But that was one of the big things, was going to see the lambs freshly shorn. Yeah. Whenever I take an Uber from Logan when I go visit my family, and I take the Uber from Boston to Stowe, the drivers are always like, "I'm never coming back here again." Like at night. People get lost a lot. It's very labyrinthian.
Right. Hilly.
Just very deciduous. A lot of the canopy. It's I mean the Vitch is the best representation of my of Stowe that I've ever seen.
That takes place there.
It doesn't, but it does to me. Just the way they do the slow zooms on the woods. That just was like a dong. That is Stowe to me. Stowe, I love it.
What was the creative spark that got you going at that age?
Seeing my dad laugh as a child at Robin Williams made me be like, okay, well, that's what I want to do. Even though I was really shy, but it was this piece of being like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a comedian. And even in kindergarten, I would sign my name, Chris the Comedian, and it was, even though I was like silent, but it was like, that's what I'm going to do. And that, I think the lack of things happening was really good for me and my friends. We were constantly sketching. We were putting on shows. We were making movies, camcorder. Like we were needing to entertain ourselves and create. We were very creative as youth. I think it was like a very small world, and in a way, I was like, I want to fill this world. It wasn't like, get me out of here. It was like, this world rocks. I want to make things. Like my first bit in stand-up was like, it was a bit about how people love to tell you about when they see deer, which just shows how rural I grew up. I was just riffing on...
Very deer-centric comedy.
I had like 8 minutes on people competing about the number of deer they saw, like adults competing about the deer they saw that week and how that was a point of pride. And that's what I was doing as a teen. And if anything, I was a little bit resentful of having to leave the nest and be like, there's more? Like,
you have to expand your palette. It's bigger than just deer. So what else is on the Stowe, like 10 minutes on Stowe?
Oh, I mean, the 10 minutes on Stowe became hours on Stowe. I did a character called Gail. She was in my stand-up, which was a woman from that town.
My Labradoodle just got accepted to Carnegie Mellon. Early acceptance! Still waiting to hear back from Yale and Pomona. Fingers crossed!
I think about where I started in stand-up. And I started in kind of a funky collective in Cambridge where people were stranger than me. Like it was, I had an inferiority complex. It was a place called the Comedy Studio. And there were people that were so eccentric, older people, Gen X. I was really inspired by Gen X, I think, because they were the generation above me. Like, and that was so cool to me, how free they were on stage. And I felt the way that we were taught stand-up too. Rick Jenkins at the studio was always teaching us to go deeper and deeper into our authentic self. And same thing with my acting teacher in college. I think of that as a formative thing. Kate Kelly was my acting teacher. The way that she told me to throw that all away. Like, it's like, you can't go into a performance with an idea of how you're going to do it. Like, you have to, you're there right now. And what's interesting is the release. And so that means you're going to, like, you have to get comfortable up. Throwing away the idea of perfection, because Stowe, everything, like my family, I come from perfectionists, and I'm far from a perfectionist. Like I don't think I could be and release the amount of work that I do, because yeah, you just can't. In this special, I think we did a really good job of that. Of like, we didn't want like a really polished thing. We wanted a real thing in a beautiful space. Like the space is beautiful and stuff, but we wanted to keep the energy. Like there is an entropy to my show. Like there is like things fall apart. I get really emotional. I get upset with the audience. And I was also responding to, at that time when I was starting on comedy, I was responding to what was happening in America, which was every stand-up was wearing like a button-up shirt and a hoodie. Everyone looked the same, or plaid shirts, and even the best, you know. And I was more into like Noel Fielding and British comics who were wearing the crazy and not even talking about it. And I found that when I discovered that clicked for me too, because I was always trying to blend. I don't know if glam's the right word, but like something bigger than just like a guy on stage with a mic.
What drove that impulse? Like why? Why did you want it to be bigger?
That is a good question. I always loved costume as a child. I grew up with girls. And so I was always like, they get to wear this. Like in a clothing store, I remember being like, are you kidding me? Like, it's like Oz versus Kansas. Like, it's like women's section. Yeah, come on. It's like boom, boom, like these cool shoes. And then the men's is just like this Willy Loman tragic stuff. Just like grays and beige, occasional like taupe at best. And I just was like, are you kidding me? So I think it was a desire to assimilate as well, because I would spend summers mostly with my mom, her sister, and my sister, and then my two girl cousins, Caitlin and Molly. And I remember being like, why do I have to be this? Why do I have to be the dope in a shirt and tie?
Right.
So I loved pageantry. I loved where like when we could wear costumes and do skits, for lack of a better word. I felt such liberation in that. And I was always prone to cross-dressing as a child. All right, cut it up, clip it. I don't know. I felt there are times where I feel. I mean, I talk about it in my special. There are times where I feel remarkable in like in the right men's attire, and then there are times where it's like, no, I'm more inclined to wear this kind of a thing. And also Boston pretends to be liberal. It's not. Like that place is terrifying. Of all the places in the world, it's one of the scariest places I've ever been. Like, it is the most judgmental, bigoted place, right? And so wearing crazy clothes there was radical back then. It was it was that like, so I would wear stuff that I didn't actually even fully my full evolution happened in California because I would have been killed in Massachusetts. Elizabeth Warren would have put a musket to the back of my head if I had gone as fully to where I am now there. But a lot of it was you guys, like you guys. It was, you want to go to a real party? All right, okay.
I've always loved like punk music and sort of like noise music, things that are sort of like saying F you to convention in different ways, and filmmakers too like that. But then I know that you've described yourself as an empath in social settings, and I have middle child syndrome, so I also sort of...
So you just got 2 AirPods in all day talking to one... One second. Well, she's got a point, Oh,
Right, exactly.
Hear him out. No, okay, guys. No. Well, I hear you. Yeah.
Those two sentiments seem at odds with each other.
They are.
What drove you as a performer to want to say F you, but then you're also an empath?
I mean, a lot of it is like, in the mob when they break your hand, but then they give you the money to pay for it, It's the aftercare. That's a lot of my career, It's letting air out the tires, It's like, it's not you to death. It's you a little bit. It's not like a destructive desire. And again, with fashion, I don't want to freak people out. Mm-hmm. I do think that my mom she hates the show off more than anything, especially she despises male grooming in particular. She thinks that there was something like that that it's almost like men have had enough. It's like, men have they have it good enough. They don't need to also, like, anytime a man like cares about the way he looks, it's sinful. So her opposition to showing off makes me at odds with myself, in that, like, I do try to contain it but it was always okay on stage. It was so anything. So it's like putting so much on stage as a safe thing, and then moving differently in the world. I don't feel the need to dress that flashy in reality. It's more the statement on stage, I think.
Right.
But the empath thing that's very interesting, because I really in Massachusetts also, like, I will cool down my flamboyance, because I don't want to say you on the streets. I want to say you in the controlled space on stage, in the short statement that I can make.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So
I'm a coward is basically what it comes down to.
Social environments can be really stressful and high anxiety, and trying to keep that balance. And then the stage as like an outlet, essentially.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's part of why I really wanted fame as a young person, was that so people could contextualize my most extreme, and then we can kind of chill the out.
Chris Fleming's new special, Live at the Palace, lets you take a peek at that most extreme version of himself. It's kaleidoscopic, and you can feel the labor that went into it, carefully honing his craft over years of playing venues across LA, until he honed it into something chaotic but deeply relatable. It's kind of rare to run into a work of art that speaks very specifically to a slice of a generation, which to me, I felt like the special speaks to a mid-millennial.
The slur of the millennial is also funny right now. Like, millennials, like, there is a derogatory, and it came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, it was like,
crept up on us, didn't it?
Because there was, yeah, and it's beautiful. It means that we're aging, and there was also that brief time. Remember that brief time where everyone was like, Gen Z's gonna save us, and then that kind of stopped, because that was before we learned that they take SpongeBob seriously. That they.
What is the slur of millennials?
Dude, I mean, okay, it's, I think Zooey Deschanel did a lot of damage. I think, like, there's that, the adorkable stuff. And again, it comes to what we were talking about. It's like there's like a character, like the character, making yourself a character, like silly old me and then my little things that that I think is the thing that is most mocked in the millennial culture.
So what makes that such fertile ground for comedy in a way? Because I feel like you're kind of riffing on that, but you're sort of transcending it. Because you are doing characters in a way in the special.
Oh, totally. One of my mission statements is to never get cute with it. I think there needs to be a brutal reality to it. I think also the adversarial nature quality that I have with my audience, I think, is important. And sometimes you see this in comedy now. There are certain like movements right now that are like that have like a huge following, and it can become a mega church really fast. Like I've gone to live shows where it's 3,000 people and they're like cheering at, short form improv, and you need to occasionally be like, stop it. Enough. Hey, no, you can't be clapping at everything, like because otherwise you're creating a bubble. Like it's going to burst. It can't be. Like you are also like a bit of a. You have to reprimand. It's like I don't want to say it's like dog owning, but it's like there's a little bit where you have to be like, hey, stop. Like, don't love me that much.
So then are you trying to just evolve as a comedian all the time to kind of stay ahead of that curve in a way?
That's the way to do it, I think. When something works, you've got to throw away that formula, and it's really hard as a writer. I find myself even right now, starting from scratch, it's a really vulnerable thing. Like people see this piece of work that you've polished, that you were touring all summer, and is really the best representation of where you are at that time. And then you start from scratch, and you're inclined to like revisit tricks and everything, but you can't. And I think, to evolve as an artist is brutal, and that's why you see a lot of people stop stand-up when they become huge, and they just be a personality or do podcasts or act or whatever, because it's like you're starting not from zero, you're starting at like -1,000, because the crowd has seen you, especially getting new fans from the special. They've seen this like, a lot of people made that really great. HBO, right. Like there was a lot of stuff that went into that. Yeah. It's beautiful.
And JB Smoove is in the special thanks.
Yeah, I mean, JB Smoove, he's in the special thanks. Good eye. JB Smoove, I opened for him at when I was in college, and he blew my mind. So that's why he's in the special thanks. Talk about a guy who is leading an audience. He will do a setup for a bit. There's a clip of him at the Apollo where, like, for the first minute, these people, everyone's like, "What the hell is he doing?" And then the way he gets them, because he's going to do what he's going to do, and he's leading them without pandering. It's so easy to pander now. It's so easy to signal and to pander, and on both sides. And you have to forget all that, I think.
So you're at a critical moment right now then, because you are getting a lot of attention. You are a stand-up in a lot of people's minds, but you are getting a lot of attention as like an identity, as like a persona. Yeah. So how are you balancing that?
Oh.
Or do you just not even think about it?
I don't. No. For me, it's like, I just have such conviction with what I think is funny and what I want to do. Writing is always the thing that saves me. If I weren't writing, I could easily be like, oh yeah, these people are right. Okay, oh yeah, oh, maybe I am good. But it's like, if you're writing and you're trying out new, like, you see how not great you are so fast, and it's just, that's why stand-up is so wonderful. And writing constantly just keeps you realizing how pathetic you are. No, that's not helpful.
When you stick to the process, it sounds like it keeps you humble and keeps you in the craft of it.
Yes, because when you make a special where I'm like, that is, like, we had a screening of that, and I was like, like in the audience, like laughing. When you make something where you're like, you're firing at the height of your powers, and then the world thinks that's Chris. It's like, no, that's me after, with a lot of people helping me out, with putting a lot of work into that, and that is an A+ paper that now that I've passed that in, I'm like, just being okay, completely starting over is a way that you will never get too egomaniacal, I think. I mean, because you have to, the work is just what I think saves it, I think. And you can't, you're not a gladiator when you or a successful gladiator when you start working again and writing again.
And that makes me want to ask about process a little bit more, because
what's scary about process is when all eyes are on you. That's when process becomes scary, because it's easy, to grow in the shadows as a fungus. When you don't have the buzz, it's easy to write bits. But when everyone's like, woo, and you're part of this media machine where you're doing things every day, you don't have as much time to kind of retreat. And when all eyes are on you, I think that can also be a destruction of process. Because also talking about process can be dangerous. It's too much because it's so. How do you do it?
It's supposed to be like a little magical. It's like asking a magician to
magical.
tell you, how the trick is done, really, in a lot of ways. But if there's any joke or bit or segment from your special that you are willing to sort of like pull back the curtain on a little bit,
sure.
I'd love to hear about sort of just the beginning to end arc of how you arrived at that final polished piece that people are seeing.
Sure. So the Oreos bit comes to mind. I do a bit about Oreos being disfigured in yogurt, frozen yogurt places, and why that's okay. And originally, so I was sitting eating Oreos in the woods, and I started thinking about like, I just had flash images of just these like horrible crumbles of Oreos at places, and it's like, how is that okay? This is like a really like thriving. I think I was thinking about my like when a career's going well, like you don't need to diminish yourself like that. Like why is that okay? And so I started writing about. Originally, it was "What Happened to You, Old Friend" was the premise of that. Was like and I tried to liken it to the scene in The Deer Hunter where De Niro. Have you seen The Deer Hunter? Where De Niro and Christopher Walken, they're friends, and then Christopher Walken is taken prisoner in Vietnam, and he finds him, and he's playing Russian roulette with the locals for money, and he's like nonverbal. And I originally tried to liken that scene to seeing like Oreos being completely like crumbled and mashed and the crowd was like, no. Like, what are you talking about? So I was like, okay. Then I tried another world where it was something about the way insurance companies will like occasionally use Snoopy and the Peanuts gang as like their logo, and it's like, how are they getting away with this? Like that bad, and that wasn't quite right. And so I developed it through over time, and then eventually it became this sadistic, almost like James Bond type villain, or maybe even Inspector Gadget, who's like head you never see. Right. And I loved that. I loved removing that tool, because like in stand-up you have X amount of tools, and you want to use all your tools at once to, you throw everything in the cannon to get the job done. But that was the first time I subtracted something to achieve something, and that seemed really funny to me. Degrade and humiliate them. Chop them up. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, we can totally chop them up, but we promise to do so equally and uniformly. Do it differently every time.
Mr. Nabisco, so to speak, is turning and facing away from the audience.
Yes.
Depriving them of seeing your facial expressions and
yes.
so on.
Yes, this sadistic, twisted character, and you don't know why he's doing what he's doing. And that was really gratifying. making that discovery and doing that on the road. Oh, I love doing that bit on the road. It's so fun.
It absolutely killed me when I first watched the Oreo bit.
Thanks, man. But see, that is an example of like, not to sound like the American Beauty quote, but like there's so much in the world. Like I need to remind myself all the time, just like it's just observing and not like getting in your head too much. It's like it's all there. There's the world is so vast to talk about. Like it's overwhelming how you could spin anything that we've seen into something beautiful and funny. So it's like you have to remember that. I have to remember that.
So you mentioned entropy earlier. What is it about entropy, showing the entropy, that makes it so powerful?
Okay, I think it's how long my road was. I got attention early on. I did an Aspen New Faces thing when I was like 2 years in, and I was too early. It was like Mulaney, Eric Andre, all these guys and gals that were just incredible. And I was really young. I was like 20, and it was too soon. And then there was a long period where there wasn't. Where I think that then my real development started. It was realizing like, wow, these people are so good. I need to get that in myself. And so, when you're a comedian, you just the levels of disgrace at live shows that you experience are just you wouldn't believe it. Like even to this day, I have nightmares about performing stand-up that are not nearly as dark as what I've experienced. Like, I even did like a gig a couple weeks ago that was so bad it was beyond my wildest nightmares. Just like tech issue, everything goes wrong, things fall apart, and so when you get used to that arena, that becomes comfort for you. Mm-hmm. That becomes home in a way. And seeing specials where the comic, everything's like, it's like every joke crushes. It's like, that has not been my experience. And so I want to show my experience. Mm. And trust me, I want to crush. I do want to crush, and I get mad when I don't. But I think it's a product of my training and the way that I was taught how for acting and for dance. And dance, I loved modern dance in college, and a lot of it was contact improv, which is throwing your body weight around your partner and learning to fall, learning what the drop is. And I do it with, literally with my body all the time on stage and everything. But like, that's also you to the perfectionism of Massachusetts and the family. With love, it's like, you know what? I am going to transcend this clinging on to perfectionism because it's a lie, and you for trying to make people live up to unrealistic expectations. And I think that interesting stuff happens in there. And also just my own resentment of things that are too precious. Also, I don't think I have, everything is a rolling piece where I have never figured everything, it's like, is that good? Like with the crowd, it's like, wait, like, cause you're collaborating with the crowd in a way where it's like, hopefully this works. Yeah. Do you like? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like you're constantly in communication with the crowd in a way that's not at all crowd work. It's not. It's not like interaction literally, but you are very much playing off their energy.
People are always going to be chatting with you, and I see it as less. My problem with crowd work, the way people do it, it's like you're holding the mic. Like, if mic them, if you're going to do that, give them the mic. You cowards. Like. Of course you can dominate these people.
Right.
But put a lav mic on, and chances are they're going to be a lot funnier than whatever you're saying. And that's also funny. Right. Like, and that's what you learn doing crowd work. A lot of time they're saying funnier stuff. That's why,
Right. It's kind of like a form of punching down in a way.
Totally. Right? Totally. And you've prepared, you're amplified. But yeah,
It never feels like your jokes are punching down.
I try not. Oh, I definitely try not to. I thrash. I definitely
Punching everywhere sideways. But
skanking, whatever the
Skanking,
ska
yeah.
dance. Yeah, but no. I absolutely hope to not be punching down. Yeah.
So not punching down, not punching up, skanking, really.
Skanking and thrashing.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
noted.
And throwing grenades and holding the ears.
Since we're talking about punching down, punching up, skanking, are you trying to do anything? Are you trying to say something?
No.
At all, or do you think about that when you're writing?
To me, it's like a lantern that's right in front of you, and you're just following in the dark. And everything's dark until you illuminate it right in front of you, and then that's the way I look at it.
And when you
That
go,
it's nothing.
So then when you go back and like watch one of your bits, or you're touring a bit that you've really brought to its culmination, then are you able to kind of realize like, oh, it's kind of saying this in a way, or
No.
do you not really even think about it?
No, I'm really bad at noticing. Sometimes accidentally. So I'll have a thing where it's like, my friend Patty Waddy, I did a show in DC, and he was like, "Yeah, man, that was great, but you talked about rotisserie you had a rotisserie chicken punchline like 6 times." And it's like sometimes like I'll get stuck on a loop, and I'll notice these these repetitions I go on. So I try to avoid that. Even in terms of, and you see this with comics, you see too much simile, you see too much rhythmic similarity. Like I want to have like, for that one it was like, have a story here, character piece here, strange, random diatribe that's petty here. You want to give a variety, a platter of stuff, so that it always feels surprising and never feels predictable. But in terms of thematics, I don't have the intelligence to do that. I don't self-examine well like that, in that way. I will say that I do feel cleansed. The more I express myself in that way, I do feel freer and lighter. In a way that's almost like when people say like, "What's next?" I'm like, I don't know. Hibernation. Like I in some ways it feels like when I put out something that I love, I'm like, I'm pretty content right now.
I will say I took away from it feeling like, oh, expressing is important.
Yes.
So kind of in a way that is a thing.
If an authentic expression, and not just doing what you think you should be doing. I think always pushing it further, surprising yourself, scaring yourself, and more authentic expression of myself, I do find that people are always very receptive towards. It's great, and I encourage it. This is also why it's so important to have a good audience and to know when to insulate yourself as a comic. I was really privileged to have the Comedy Studio, which was in Harvard Square. So it was there were a lot of like really, you were pushed to do not just the basic comedy that like at that time especially was like kind of like brash and kind of like hateful. It was like they were curious audiences and they wanted to discover you. And I think there's a lot of comedy clubs where the culture is not that. And I think that it's really important for young comics to find places that hold them. And again, not too much clapter and all that stuff, but like I do think that a curious audience is what has made me who I am and why it's different. Because if I was performing at the Comedy Store every night, I would belittle myself. It just flattens, I think. Sorry, it does. I think tourist traps, you learn to survive because I performed in them too, but I knew not to do it too much. That's just my 2 cents.
I mean, I think something I run into a lot with our brand, our series, American Masters, is, there tends there's a tendency in America to think about the individual achievement in everything that's being done, but so much is social, so much is communal.
Of course.
And what you're describing to me sounds like a communal achievement.
Of course, completely. It's a full collaboration. Otherwise, we would just be Twitch streaming or something. Like if you're there, they are so because I'm not a psycho. Like I'm not going to go on stage and thrash around like that in front of a crowd that's not feeling it. Like it's like kindling. Their laughter and support is what is fuel. Like it's like someone pedaling, to give you energy. It's like they're helping me get through these things. They're helping me fly. And so when they're not, you have to find a way to survive. And exactly what you said, it's communal. It's chemistry. It's like so much is like, who are you as a performer? It's like, well. Or who are you as a person, identity stuff. It's like, not to say that you should let go of yourself or whatever, but like chemistry changes it. Who you're around is going to really change you. If you filmed me in front of like a crowd that didn't see me, you would be horrified at what would happen. And like, I am stronger now, but like, yeah, my audience is such a part of who I am as a performer because I've also I've had the luxury of doing theaters for like 10 years, and they've let me investigate things that a tourist trap comedy club would not.
When you put out a special like the one we're talking about today, that is in a vacuum for most people watching it. Most people didn't see you at Largo 12 times,
right,
seeing where you're developing.
Right.
What do you hope people take away from the special?
When you're starting out writing, you have this idea that something has to be everything, where you're like, I remember being really bogged down by this, I have so much to say and I have so much I think a lot of young creatives or people starting out creatively have this feeling of knowing what you could do and wanting to squeeze it. I still do this, wanting to squeeze everything into everything. I do it with my late night appearances. I definitely try to do too much because I have like 7 minutes to play with. And as you get older, you realize that showing where you are right now is the best thing you can do for yourself, the most interesting thing you can do for yourself. I want people to get out of it. I just want them to get something out of it. That's completely out of my control, what they get out of it. I have no interest in that. Other than I hope they like it. I hope they enjoy it. And I hope there is a little bit of like, wow, damn, I can't believe that's on HBO in some ways. Like, wow, okay. Like, when you're seeing stuff when you're younger, like, Jesus, this is being broadcast? Wow, okay. Like, yeah, I guess to be a formative moment of like when I saw The Mighty Boosh when I was young, I was like, to kind of like shake things up a little bit. I would be really happy if I did that for somebody.
Well, thanks for giving us time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
That's our show. A big thank you to Chris Fleming for taking the time to talk. American Masters Creative Spark is a production of the WNET Group, media made possible by all of you. This episode was produced by me, Joe Skinner. Our executive producer is Michael Cantor. Original music is composed by Hannes Brown. This episode was mixed and mastered by Josh Broom. Funding for American Masters Creative Spark is provided by the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the Anderson Family Charitable Fund, the Mark Haas Foundation, Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, the Tarina Endowment Fund, the Ambrose Monell Foundation, the Kate W. Cassidy Foundation, the Philip and Janice Levin Foundation, and by PBS viewers like you. Thanks.